All right, so bear with us, folks. Hang tight. Okay, so while we were on a break, Mari did me a quick little favor. We forgot to add a link, and this is going to kind of start off our climate topic tonight on the GSM Climate News section of our program. Bear with me here. I'm just waiting for this to actually load up. All right, here we go. So I wanted to show you guys this. This is space weather impacts on climate. Now you can find this at NOAA.gov/impacts/space weather impacts climate. And we go down here. First of all, the very first thing that we see when you look at this impact on climate, all weather on Earth from the surface of the planet out into space begins with the sun. Space weather and terrestrial weather, the weather we feel at the surface, are influenced by the small changes in the sun undergoes during solar cycles. The most important impact the sun has on Earth is the brightness or radiance of the sun itself. The sun produces energy in the form of photon lights, and it kind of talks about a little bit more in depth about cycles and everything like that. But right off the bat, it tells you the very beginning, the Earth, the sun has everything to do with the planet's climate. All weather on Earth from the surface to the planet out into outer space begins with the sun. This article does not mention anything about man-made emissions or anything. But here's where it gets juicy here at the bottom, folks. The duration of solar minimum may also impact on Earth's climate. During solar minimum, there is a maximum in the amount of cosmic rays, high energy particles, whose source is outside our solar system, reaching Earth. There is a theory that cosmic rays can create nucleation sites in the atmosphere, which seed cloud formation and create cloudier conditions. It then states right here, if this were true, then there would be a significant impact on climate, which would be modulated by the 11-year solar cycle. NOAA is laying it out there, folks. There is a theory that cosmic rays can create nucleation sites in the atmosphere, which seed cloud formation and create cloudier conditions. If this were true, then there would be a significant impact on climate, which would be modulated by the 11-year solar cycle. So you have to be asking yourself, what is all the confusion for? Why is NOAA doing this? Why is it that they put out in broad daylight that man contributes to warming and climate? But here on their space weather impacts on climate section here at NOAA.gov, this is their website. It first states that the sun has everything to do with our climate. And then at the bottom, it basically confirms that the Earth's impact would be significantly impacted.
It's called plausible deniability.
I mean, this is amazing stuff here, folks. That you have to dig to find this, but it's right here. They are admitting. And they're saying, if this was true, well, we know this is true. Look at the cloud coverage now. We're over 80% of the world covered in clouds. Easily. I know you all can sit back and tell me the last time you had 3 days in a row of nothing but blue skies. You can't. I challenge you right now. Unless you guys are being ornery and just, saying that you saw 3 days in a row without clouds. But I'm being serious. I know here in New York, I can't say that. Not in the last 3 years. Even going back and thinking back in my Ohio days. It's been a while. So if this theory is true, this would significantly change the climate on Earth. Which so far, the cosmic ray theory is being recognized. And places like weather.com have also admitted this year that where we are in the minimum contributed to the cold temperatures that we saw this past winter here in the United States. Now, I just showed you guys cooler weather to affect Europe. I'll show you what's coming towards the United States as well later on in the show. But guys, I really wanted to lead off with the climate news. This is right here. NOAA is admitting that the sun has everything to do with our climate. It begins from the surface to out of this planet into outer space. Everything begins with the sun. And if the cosmic ray theory is true and creates cloudier conditions, this would make a significant impact on climate, which right now, I think everybody can agree, we see a lot more cloudier conditions. And that is the presence of cosmic rays, highly charged particles that are interacting with other particulates in our atmosphere, cloud seeding, creating more cloud nucleation, more cloud coverage, blocking sunlight, along with all these other volcanoes that we're experiencing. Quite a bit of earthquake activity on the rise this past 7 days. Quite a bit of volcanic activity on the rise the past 14 days. Now we're dealing with some potential space weather from our sun going to sleep. And this isn't even the official beginning yet, folks. So let's go back to the grandsolarminimum.com. This came out July 2nd. June temperature came in at 0.47 degrees above baseline. And yes, it does show an increase for the month of June. And as everybody can see, since 2016, we have had a trend of cooling. Sharp cooling, indeed. Yes, it was true last year this time. We were a lot colder. I think we were somewhere in the 0.21 region of the temperature range. But fear not. This is not an indication that we are warming. This is just part of the natural cycle here. And you can also take a look on our website of past readings from this year and back to January of 2018. Let's go ahead and quickly look. Yeah, so June temperatures came in last year at 0.20 above baseline. So we were pretty chilly. A lot colder last year. There has been a little bit of an increase this year in late 2018 into 2019, but also showing significant temperature drops in 2019 than we were seeing in 2018, in my opinion, so far. Yes, we rise quite a bit, but then we also fall quite a bit as well. So we will see what July brings. Again, talking about Europe being colder for the second half of July. And speaking of being colder, where it shouldn't be colder, we interviewed David Dilley quite some time. And his specialty is upon lunar cycles, which kind of work together with these solar cycles. And this is kind of an example right here. A wild weather year brought excessive moisture to many areas in the United States, resulting in planting occurring at a historically slow pace. The cooler and wetter than normal weather didn't seem to budge throughout May. A weather pattern Drew Lerner said was forecasted this winter. We used the lunar cycle of an 18-year repeating pattern. It was very obvious. We had 3 analog years. Every one of them had the same wet bias and alternating cool and warm bias to it. So the last one was 2001, and this lunar cycle happens to be lining up in 2019. So not only was this lunar cycle correlated with the last temperature drop and moisture increase, it's being correlated to this one as well. Says that's kind of a byproduct of all those warm ocean temperatures and atmospheric conditions that we have right now. There's so much more moisture in the atmosphere. Every time a cooler mass comes along, we get these bigger rains. And that has a lot to do with cooler atmosphere and the abundance of cosmic radiation in our atmosphere. As the calendar turned to late June, the heat started to show up, and heat and humidity finally providing needed heat to the late planted crop. But learners said, don't get used to the heat sticking around. The whole cycle that created the wet bias is a repeating pattern that's not going to go away. It's going to stay with us. We'll go through some brief periods of warmer weather, and then we're going to cool down again. Then we'll go back into warmth again, but most of the time we're going to be cooler. A cooler than normal pattern, learners said, occurs when the solar and lunar cycle are both at play. The scenario creates cooler conditions. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see your average temperature in July and August both be a little below normal, although we have some brief moments of warmer weather intertwined in there. We'll end up with a degree of accumulation that might be a little bit below average, especially in August. Learners said the best case scenario is that the normal amount of heat comes through the second half of the summer. That's the best case scenario they're expecting right now, folks. They're not expecting a heat wave or a hotter summer at the end. They're expecting, at best, just normal heat. So give or take 10-15%, we could be looking at cooler temperatures, and they're not getting that needed heat. With cooler than normal conditions, what about an early frost or freeze, learner said, his biggest concern right now. At best, we are going to have a normal frost and freeze. I do not see this growing season being extended, especially in the northern parts of the Midwest. The odds are really high that we're going to end up with northern areas finishing out early. Bottom line, I think probably the most important thing is that we're going to have to finish this season. That's not necessarily going to be all that great. We need to be aware of the fact that there's not much we can do about it. But I think the bottom line is going to be difficult finish to the end of the season for a lot of folks. So Mari and I did an interview with a podcast called Moving the Iron. Is that correct, Mari? Moving the Iron? Moving Iron, I'm sorry. Moving Iron. Deals a lot of crop talk, keeping the pulse on the farming industry. And before he brought us on, there was a gentleman who he had on talking about how they're about 4 to 5 weeks late in planting. And they share the same concerns as most of the people that we know in the farming community. Now it's a race to the first frost. So if you're normally picking corn in October 1st and we're 4 to 5 weeks late, and we know July is not going to stay hot, according to multiple reports that I'm going to show as well, the chance that these crops will get to where they need to be by October 1st is almost at a very historic low, probably what, 30% maybe? The late planted ones, anyway. Not the states that got their crop in the ground. I'm not talking about them. But we're still talking about resurveying 14 states in the corn crops and 13 states in the soybean crops when we get the report next month. So the farming situation is becoming a big deal and a big concern. And the voice is getting louder. And we went and did an interview and we helped explain basic solar minimum, grand solar minimum, shorter grow seasons, colder winters, explaining, just the simple things why these farmers are experiencing what they're experiencing this year, that we've been confirmed that we're heading into a grand solar minimum by 2020, that things are just now starting to ramp up. And they're predicted to be worse next year, leaps and bounds. And the only reason why I keep saying that, folks, is because I was told this back in 16 and 17 that each year it's going to get worse. And each year it's gotten worse, a little bit more, but a lot this year. It's definitely accelerated. For us to have something to talk about on the show three times a week, live, and then 5 daily shows, small ones, for July 5th, that's a lot for this channel. And it's not just about snow and cold temperatures. There's a lot more to it that's happening right now, folks. You're only being told part of the truth. But slowly but surely, it's becoming to the point where you can't ignore it. I mean, Noah, of all people, they have been more proponents of man-made global warming than anyone. Here's an article that tells us the sun controls the climate. And at the bottom, it tells you that this theory, if it was true, it would significantly impact the climate, which it is true, and it is significantly impacting the climate right now. These ag articles, these podcasts, these farmers are talking to each other. This is beyond going to be difficult. This is scary. And again, there are states that do have decent crop planted right now. I'm not saying it's gloom and doom all over the United States, but in 13 to 14 states, it's not looking good. Thanks to David Birch, shared this with me and Mari in our Grand Solar Minimum inbox on Twitter. And you always hear about all these, these scientists, this 97% that support man-made global warming. Well, here we have a list of people who do not support man-made global warming. In fact, this list is quite impressive. Scientists questioning the accuracy of the IPCC on climate projections. Right here, number 3, Piers Corbin. Judith Curry's on this list. Robert E. Davis. The list goes on. Freeman Dyson. Richard Lidson, MIT. I mean, these are some pretty, Patrick Moore, his name is on this list. And then we keep moving to another article. Science is arguing that global warming is primarily caused by natural processes. Another long list of folks who believe in this as well. So not only their names, but examples as well. Look at this. Scientists arguing that the cause of global warming is unknown. Another legitimate argument. Pretty big long list of this one too. Scientists arguing that global warming will have few negative consequences. Not as big. Deceased scientist. Quite a few. But just nice to see some of that proof. Whenever someone who believes in global warming and they want examples, they want names, this is the paper you throw at them. This has it all. Broke down into categories. Again, thank you to TSM Solar Observations for throwing this our way to share with you folks. That way, again, sometimes it's hard to find proof that what we're doing is a legit cause and that there needs to be awareness raised. And people need to know there are important scientists out there who do disagree with man-made global warming. The biggest hoax of our lifetime. Climate, a counter... Oh, I gotta translate this here. It's in a different language.
It should automatically pop up with a translator.
It did. Thank you, Mari. Petition on global warming, man-made basically. The undersigned citizens and scientists send a warm invitation to political leaders to adopt environmental protection policies consistent with scientific knowledge. In particular, it is urgent to combat pollution, which I agree, where it occurs according to indications of the best science. In this regard, the delay with which the wealth of knowledge made available by the world's research is used to reduce the man-made pollutant emissions widely present in both environmental and marine environmental systems is deplorable. But we must be aware that carbon dioxide itself is not a pollutant. On the contrary, it is indispensable for life on our planet. This warms my heart to seeing other people around the world getting involved with this fight against being taxed to death. This fight of lack of science, of using puppet celebrities and movie stars and political figures to get their point across, to make people believe, because doing your own research, folks, it is time consuming and nobody's got time for that. They're too distracted with politics. and fake wars that aren't happening. It's unfortunate. All this stuff that's happening right in front of our faces. The drumbeat's getting louder, folks. More and more people are now questioning man-made global warming. And I do say, what a time to be alive. And this is definitely more motivation for Mari and myself to move out of the state of New York. New York posed to take the lead on climate change. Act sets the most aggressive carbon benchmarks in the country. So what Cuomo wants is the state's electricity, 70% of it, has to be wind, solar, hydroelectric, and nuclear by 2030. And an ultimate goal to reduce the state's net carbon dioxide emissions to zero by 2050. Now, we have some time here in New York before this actually gets put into motion. They have until 2023 to hold hearings, draft a finalized plan with a deadline of 2024 for the state agencies to begin carrying out these components. Lawmakers say some time of the essence as a growing consensus of climate scientists is an agreement that the window of slowed or reverse the worst effects of climate change is rapidly closing. So lawmakers are saying that there's scientists telling them that the window's closing on saving the planet. I'm pretty sure by 2023 that the consensus definitely will be skeptical. They will look at what is happening in front of them, and there is no way that Cuomo is going to be able to implement this plan. If we get the cold that we're told we are going to get for this 2019, 2020, and 2020 and 2021 winter, those 2 years, those 2 seasons are going to show us why we need to keep these coal plants, the natural gas plants, going. Especially since natural gas is clean anyway. It's a lot cleaner than coal, I could say that. In fact, I do remember a statistic talking about how the United States 2.7% in the negative on CO2 emissions for 2017, and a lot of it was because of the natural gas movement. I think Trump put a lot of faith in more natural gas plants being opened, and they are taking credit for cleaner emissions because of how much reduced emissions natural gas plants actually put out. So here's another case of a politician who is confused about the climate. He's confused on what's harmful to our atmosphere. He doesn't know that CO2 isn't a pollutant. He is going to try to stop something that we cannot stop at the cost of New York taxpayers and possibly the lives of some people if such bills actually go forth. It doesn't stop just at home heating and energy. It goes into depth talking about the cars that we would drive here in New York. Of course, AOC is from this state. She unfortunately represents a seat in Congress. I pretty much know she has a lot to do with this bill that's getting passed and hopefully not signed, but it looks like it will. But again, I think a lot's going to happen in the next 2 years. This bill is going to be trash. Somebody's going to throw this out the window and set it on fire in a hurry. And they're going to hope they put more CO2 in the atmosphere by 2023. Even with the solar max approaching in 2025, we're still not going to see that heat that we had in solar cycle 24. Nowhere near that. Not when we're getting predictions from NOAA as low as 67 sunspots. NASA's saying 50. Others are saying the low 90s. There's a couple stubborn people out there, I'm not going to mention any names, who believe it's going to be somewhere in the 140 to 160 range. Time will tell. I already showed you guys the sun today on the SDO, it looks like it's going to stay quiet for quite some time. And before we get off this climate news, I have to read this. Carl Palladino is a well-known developer in Buffalo. He recently posted a letter from National Fuel warning of the flawed climate plan. I got to zoom this in so you guys can see this. Dear Palladino, since you are one of National Fuel's largest commercial industry customers, I am writing to make you aware of proposed climate change legislations that may essentially ban the use of natural gas in New York State in the coming years. The bill is currently in both New York State Senate and Assembly and has a very real likelihood of being approved by the end of the spring session, end of June 2019. The proposed legislation, the Climate and Community Protection Act, is called for the elimination of all greenhouse gas emissions, and it lies to Mr. Palladino about gases that trap heat in the atmosphere within 30 years. In short, this will dramatically alter the vehicles we drive, air travel, how we heat our homes, fuel business and industry, on-site electric generation, agriculture, emergency services, and various other aspects of our lives. Yes, this is more scary. This letter to Palladino is scarier than the actual bill that they're passing, in my opinion, because National Grid is showing us what this is going to affect. It will dramatically alter the vehicles we drive, air travel, how we heat our homes, fuel businesses and industry, on-site electric generation, agriculture, emergency services, and various other aspects of our lives. Sounds like it covers everything there. A direct impact to you and your company could very well be that the 1238 Group LLC could not feasibly convert from natural gas to electricity for all necessary energy needs. Guys, bottom line, here's the carbon tax that comes in with this. Yeah, there's a tax. So there's a bracket where a small company will get a $300 to $440 a year increase tax-wise. And then there's a middle-sized group that gets taxed an additional $2,900 to $4,300 a year. And then for you very large commercial industry accounts, $2.88 million to $4.2 million each year in taxes for not converting. This is like Obamacare, but for the climate. This is a mandate, folks. This is a mandate. Absolutely disgusting. And it scares me. I live in this state. National Grid and Fuel is basically throwing out a letter full of fear porn here at this large corporation, this large commercial customer here. It's going to dramatically affect, alter everything, every aspect in your life. And you better believe it, even what you eat. It mentions agriculture. It mentions emergency services, which means if they have rolling blackouts, they can't reach you at certain times. Guys, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.